Hello, my name is Brittany, and I suffer from a rare disease called pseudotumor cerebri, also known as intracranial hypertension, or IH for short. Today I'm going to teach you about some of the symptoms and treatments of IH. In a normal person, spinal fluid is constantly created and absorbed. It flows through your spinal column and it surrounds your brain. It's a good thing because it cushions your brain so that if you make any sudden movements, your brain isn't thudding against your skull. In a patient with intracranial hypertension, instead of absorbing, the spinal fluid builds up in your brain. Imagine this is your skull. If I were to keep filling this with water, eventually it would start overflowing. But your body can't do that. It's not like the spinal fluid has anywhere to leak out of. So what it does instead is it builds up. It squishes against your brain, taking up every spot it can. And it puts all this pressure on there as it tries to move the soft tissue in order to find any space it can get into. So probably the most obvious symptom that you would be able to think of for an IH patient is pain. Obviously your brain is being squished. You are going to be in a lot of pain. For IH patients, pain is chronic. It's every single day at different levels. There are nights when I sit there trying to go to sleep and just laying my head on my pillow is like somebody is beating a sledgehammer against my skull. My energy drains so fast that I don't even get to leave the house anymore. That is a lot of pain for us to deal with. Another symptom that a lot of IHers have is dizziness. A lot of times I find myself stumbling into walls or tripping over things and just kind of wavering all the time. I'll lean against the doorway and kind of hold my head and have to steady myself because I feel lightheaded and dizzy when I move around. Many IHers experience a symptom called tinnitus. It's basically a pulsing sound that you hear in either one or both ears. For me, it's kind of like a whooshing windstorm, and it's always in my left ear. And it kind of changes by position. Late at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, it's as if I have my ear against this speaker at a concert and it's just blaring in at me with this noise. It makes it very hard to fall asleep when you're trying to tune that noise out, and it's internal, so it's not like you can put in earplugs and block it out. One of the IH symptoms that often leads to diagnosis is papilledema. Papilledema is a medical term for swelling on your optic nerves. Basically, if you have papilledema, you are going blind. So with all these horrible symptoms that are just life-changing and disabling, you would think that there would be a lot of treatments out there, right? Wrong. One treatment that they have is pills such as Diamox or Topamax. The problem is that these medications, if they do work, they don't tend to work for very long before your symptoms start coming back. There are patients who are on thousands and thousands of milligrams a day of some of these medications to try and combat their symptoms. But the side effects of these medications are horrible, such as dizziness and tingling for some of them. There's some of them you have trouble, you shouldn't get pregnant while you're on them, and it's not anything that people want to take long term. An old-fashioned but still pretty widely used treatment of IH is the spinal tap, also known as the lumbar puncture. In a spinal tap, they insert a needle into your spine and draw off spinal fluid. This procedure can be extremely painful, or it could be not so painful, depending on who is doing the procedure, how experienced they are, how good they are at it. There are downsides to spinal taps. If the fluid is drawn off too quickly, it can cause a low pressure headache because the pressure in your head is dropping suddenly from a really high pressure to a really low pressure. And your brain goes, oh my god, I don't have enough fluid, and you have a low pressure headache. Another symptom is backache. Anywhere from a few hours to a few days after a spinal tap, your back is so sore. My last spinal tap, I tried to lay down on my bed the day that it was done, and it made me jump because the pain was like somebody who stabbed me in the back just from trying to lay down on my bed. My last spinal tap only lasted about 4 days before my pain came back, and unfortunately this happens to a lot of patients where the pain comes back very rapidly after a spinal tap. Repeated spinal taps are not good for your body. It's dangerous to do the procedure in the first place. You can cause damage in the spine, and the scar tissue buildup from the spinal taps can cause just a lot of damage on its own. There are people who have had hundreds and hundreds of spinal taps to relieve pressure. I know somebody who it could be life-threatening for her to have another spinal tap because she has had so many and has built up so much scar tissue. In order to avoid constant spinal taps, some doctors decide that a shunt is the best choice for their patients. Either a VP shunt, which goes from a ventricle in your brain to somewhere else in your body, or an LP shunt that goes from your spine to somewhere else in your body. These shunts relocate the spinal fluid so that it can drain in a part of the body that actually knows how to absorb it. Shunts are fantastic in theory, and for some people they work wonders, but for many people they are full of complications. In 1.5 years, I had 7 shunt surgeries because I just kept having complications. I had 2 infections, both of which were severe enough I had to be in the hospital for 20 days apiece on IV antibiotics. Many patients get infections, their shunt stops working. It is horrible. That is where the IH Research Foundation comes in. The IH Research Foundation is working to collect medical records of all IH patients and try and find a cause of the disease and try and find a cure for the disease, most importantly, a cure. Together, we can make a difference. If you're a patient, register so that they can have access to your medical records and your information, and just add that to the pool. If you can donate even $1 towards their cause, that's $1 closer we are to finding a cure for this awful, awful disease. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you learned something about IH while you were here, and I hope that you understand us patients and the hell that we live through every day a little better.